Welcome, everyone. You're tuned into a special deep dive from Planet of Baseball.
Great to be here.
If you follow the Planet of Baseball podcast, well, this is where we get into the real details.
That's right.
And today, we're drawing straight from a really fascinating new post on the Planet of Baseball blog.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and we absolutely have to give a shout out and a big thanks to Tom Tango. You probably know him as @TangoTiger online.
Oh, definitely. His work is always top-notch.
Seriously, we really appreciate him sharing his insights. And today's topic, it's all about catcher framing.
Getting into the nitty-gritty of how we actually measure that skill.
Exactly. We're going to unpack the different ways statisticians try to evaluate it, looking closely at the models Tom discusses in his post.
So the mission for you listening is really to get a clearer picture of how these advanced stats are built, how they're compared, especially for something like framing.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Catcher framing. It's that subtle skill catchers have, right?
Yeah.
Receiving the pitch to make it look more like a strike.
Precisely. Influencing the umpire's call. And Tom's post talks about an update to the catcher framing leaderboard over on Savant.
Right. So there was an older way of doing this.
There was. The previous method, it divided the strike zone into 5 big regions. You had the heart, then the shadow area just inside and just outside the zone,
Okay.
plus the chase zone further out, and then waste pitches way off. And for each, they calculated league average called strike rates, considering, batter and pitcher handedness.
So kind of broad categories.
Yeah, more league-level averages for those zones. But this new model Tom writes about, it gets way more specific.
How so?
Well, instead of just one big shadow zone on each side, it breaks that area, the really crucial border area, into 8 smaller bins. 8.
8 bins. Wow, okay.
And it doesn't just stop there. It also looks at how close the pitch actually is to the edge within each of those tiny bins.
So much more precise.
Much more. It gives you a far more granular probability that that specific pitch will be called a strike. It's really drilling down to the individual pitch level.
Okay, that sounds like a definite improvement, like more accuracy.
It is, in terms of pitch level probability. But, and this is a key point Tom raises, there's a potential trade-off.
Oh, what's that?
The new model doesn't include a component for regression toward the mean.
Regression toward the mean. Remind me what that does again.
Sure. The old model used it to sort of temper the results. It acknowledged that some of a catcher's really high or low framing numbers in a season might be partly due to luck, or maybe the specific pitchers they caught, or even the ballparks they played in. Regression nudged those extreme results a bit closer to the average.
Gotcha. So the new model takes that out.
It does. The thinking is to get a pure measure of just the catcher's skill, removing the pitcher influence, for example.
Which makes sense if you want a catcher-specific stat.
Right. But Tom calls this maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Because while isolating the catcher is good, losing that regression means you might also lose some stability. And you're not accounting for things like potential venue effects, like do umpires call zones differently in different parks?
Yeah, that venue thing sounds complicated.
It really is. It highlights that constant challenge in analytics, isolating one skill, when everything in baseball is so interconnected. Do you go for maximum pitch level precision or a more generalized, perhaps more stable season level number?
Okay, so how does this new, more detailed model actually compare in practice? Tango looked at it against the old one, right?
He did. Compared the new model to the current Savant model, and also brought in a couple of other well-known framing metrics you find on Fangraphs: Statcast framing, steamer framing, and DRS framing.
A good range of comparisons then.
Definitely. And they used data from 2021 to 2024, focusing on catchers who saw at least 500 pitches in that critical shadow zone.
How many catchers did that end up being?
That gave them a solid sample of 297 catchers.
All right. And the first check was correlation, seeing how much these different stats agree.
Exactly. How closely do they rank catchers? And the results were pretty revealing. The correlation between steamer framing and this new Savant model was incredibly high, like our 0.97.
Wow, almost identical rankings then.
Very, very similar. And the current Savant model also correlated really strongly with both steamer and the new model, around 0.92 to 0.93.
So what does that tell us, even with the new model's extra detail?
It suggests that when you aggregate everything up over a full season, these 3 models, steamer, current Savant, new Savant, tend to paint a very similar picture of who the good and bad framers are overall. The pitch level refinements in the new model don't drastically change the season totals compared to the other 2.
Interesting, but there was one outlier, wasn't there?
Yes, DRS framing. Its correlation with the other 3 was much lower, We're talking 0.61 to 0.68.
Significantly different then.
Quite different. Now, as Tango points out, different isn't automatically bad. It could just mean DRS is measuring framing in a fundamentally different way, maybe emphasizing different aspects.
Okay, so they measure differently year to year. But what about predicting performance? How reliable are they over time?
That's the next crucial test, year-to-year correlation. If a metric is capturing a real stable skill, a catcher's score in one year should predict their score reasonably well the next year.
Makes sense. So how did they stack up there?
Steamer had the highest year-to-year correlation at 0.60. The current Savant model and the new Savant model were basically tied, both at 0.57.
And DRS?
DRS was lower again at 0.43.
So Steamer seems the most consistent year over year based on this.
Yes, it showed the best reliability in this test. And it's interesting that the current Savant model held up just as well as the newer one in year-to-year terms.
Why might that be?
That regression toward the mean component in the current model probably plays a role there. It adds a bit of smoothing, a bit of stability to the year-end numbers, which helps with that year-to-year consistency.
Ah, okay. So the new model, while maybe more precise pitch by pitch, might be slightly less stable year to year without that regression.
Potentially, yes. That seems to be what the data suggests here.
Then Tango did something even more intricate, looking at cross-model prediction.
He did, asking, how well does Model X in year T predict Model Y in year T plus 1?
Okay, what did that show?
Well, generally, each model was best at predicting itself in the next year, which you'd kind of expect. Steamer year T predicted Steamer year T plus 1 best, 0.60, but the newer 0.59 and current 0.58 Savant models were pretty close behind in predicting future Steamer results.
So they're all reasonably good at forecasting each other, mostly.
The Savant models and Steamer are, yes. They seem to be capturing similar underlying truths about framing ability over time, but DRS.
Another different story for DRS.
Yeah. Here's the really striking finding. Remember how DRS had lower correlations in the same year, suggesting a different approach?
Right.
Well, it turns out DRS in year T was not the best predictor of DRS in year T plus 1. Its own year-to-year correlation was only 0.43.
So other models predicted future DRS better than DRS itself did.
Get this. Steamer year T was actually better at predicting DRS year T plus 1, correlation of 0.47, than DRS year T was 0.43.
Wow. Okay, that seems significant.
It really is. Tango's conclusion from this is pretty direct. Despite DRS having a different methodology, that methodology doesn't seem to lead to better or even equal predictive power for its own future results, at least within this 2021-2024 timeframe. It suggests a potential issue with the DRS framing metrics' reliability or validity during this period.
So the unique approach didn't translate into better consistency or predictability.
Exactly. It kind of raises questions about what DRS is capturing if it can't predict itself as well as another model can.
Okay, moving on slightly. Tango mentioned something about league average not always being 0 in the new model.
Right, because it's built purely from the pitch level probabilities, just due to random variation across the season, the overall league average might drift slightly away from 0 runs.
But for the public data on Savant, they want it to be 0,
Right.
right, as a baseline.
Correct. So they apply a small adjustment, like an odds multiplier, after the fact. It nudges the probabilities just enough to ensure that across all the combinations, zone regions, handedness, seasons, the league average always nets out to exactly 0.
A practical adjustment for usability.
Yes. He notes it might slightly decrease the raw year-to-year correlation, but the benefit is having that clear, consistent 0 bits line for comparison.
Makes sense. Okay, so finally, he showed what this looks like with actual player data, before and after the model update.
Yep, showed the top framers from 2021-2024 using the current model, and then how their rankings and run values change with the newer model.
And what was the main difference visually?
The biggest thing is the spread. Because the new model lacks that regression toward the mean, the numbers stretch out more. Really good framers look even better, potentially.
Like the example he gave. Bailey.
Exactly. Patrick Bailey in 2024 goes from plus 16 runs saved in the current model to plus 22 runs in the newer one. That's a significant jump.
But the guys at the bottom stayed roughly the same.
Yeah, he noted there was pretty good consistency at the bottom end of the rankings between the two models.
And this wider spread is reflected in the standard deviation, right?
Right. The standard deviation, which measures how spread out the data, is increased from about 4 runs in the current model to about 5 runs in the newer one. More variability.
So removing the regression allows for those bigger peaks and valleys in the observed performance?
That's the idea. A potentially truer reflection of the raw framing events, but maybe with slightly less year-to-year stability baked in.
Okay, so let's try and sum up this deep dive, drawing from Tom Tango's excellent analysis on Planeta Baseball.
We've seen the move towards much finer pitch-level detail in the new Savant model.
Right, but also that trade-off with removing the regression component affecting year-to-year stability a bit.
We saw that most of the main models, Steamer, New Savant, Current Savant, actually agree quite strongly on the overall season rankings.
Despite their different internal workings,
Wow.
with DRS being the notable outlier in how it measures framing.
And critically, that DRS outlier status didn't translate into better self-prediction year over year, raising some questions about its methodology during this period.
We also touched on the practical adjustment made to keep the league average at 0 for the public data.
It's just a fantastic glimpse behind the curtain, really. Tom Tango's work lets us see how these stats are constantly being refined and debated.
Absolutely. And for you listening, if this sparks your interest, definitely head over to the Planeta Baseball blog. Read Tom's full post, check out the leaderboards, explore the other great content they have there.
It's well worth the read.
So it leaves us with a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. As we get more and more incredibly detailed data in baseball, like this pitch-level framing stuff, how does that change how we fundamentally value player skills? Does it shift our focus?
And maybe what other hidden skills or aspects of the game are just waiting for this kind of granular data and analysis to bring them to light. It's always evolving.